Good day, family. This is video number 12 in our series, The Tongue. In the last video, we talked about how words shape the home. Today, we're going to talk about a form of speech that Scripture treats very seriously, even though it often feels subtle and socially acceptable. As a matter of fact, it's probably expected. We're talking about gossip and grumbling and how gossip and grumbling really announce themselves loudly. But Scripture warns that their damage is deep and far-reaching. Now, what is gossip? How would we define it? Because gossip is not simply sharing information. Scripture defines it by intent and effect. The wise man Solomon, Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 28, we're told that a whisperer separates close friends. That verse reminds us that gossip doesn't just pass along words, it fractures something. In this case, it fractures trust. Now let's consider why gossip spreads. Gossip often disguises itself as concern, as I'm just processing, or I'm just venting. You might have heard those, or you might have said that at some point in time. But Scripture is clear. When words are shared unnecessarily, without the intent to restore or help, they begin to undermine relationships rather than strengthen them. Gossip really heals. It almost always divides. Let's go back to this wise man by the name of Solomon, because he tells us something about the power of words. Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 8. He tells us that the words of a whisperer are like tasty morsels, and they go down into the innermost parts of the body. And that imagery is intentional. Gossip is appealing. It draws people in, but once absorbed, it affects the heart. Now, grumbling is a heart issue as well. Scripture treats grumbling with equal seriousness. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 14, Paul instructs believers there to do all things without murmuring and disputings. And grumbling is not just complaining, it's a posture of dissatisfaction that quietly erodes gratitude and trust in God. It's very serious. Now, why grumbling is dangerous ought to be pretty obvious. Grumbling shifts focus. It trains the heart to see the problems rather than the provision. It spreads discontent to others, and it slowly reshapes our perspective. Instead of being content in gratitude, I prefer to grumble. Scripture shows us that grumbling rarely stays private. It multiplies. Consider with me Israel. Here is a warning example that we can find from the Scriptures. The Old Testament gives us a sobering picture of this in Numbers chapter 14 and verse 27. Where God addresses the continual complaints of Israel there in the wilderness. Their grumbling did not go unnoticed, and it did not go without consequence. God treats persistent complaining as a faith issue and not a personality trait. There's a difference. Here's a core truth for you. Here's what Scripture makes clear. Gossip and grumbling quietly undermine trust, unity, and faith. And their damage is often unseen until it is widespread. Consider with me 3 warning signs. Warning signs that the Scripture invites you and I to watch for. Number 1, when words are shared without a redemptive purpose. Number 2, when complaints becomes habitual rather than occasional. Number 3, when conversations leave people more suspicious, discouraged, or divided. These signs helps us to discern whether our speech is building or eroding. What if you and I looked at speech as stewardship? Scripture calls us to steward our words carefully, especially when speaking about others and circumstances. What we whisper matters just as much as what we proclaim loudly. Here's some further application for you. And I always say application for you, but it's application for you and for me. A couple of more questions for you and I to consider. Do my words about others tend to protect or expose? Do my complaints cultivate gratitude or discontent? And am I willing to let God refine not just what I say publicly, but what I say privately? Now, those questions ought to help us to bring hidden speech into the light. Let's look forward. In the next video, we'll move into the witness section of the series and talk about how to speak with grace in a hostile world. Because the way we speak doesn't just shape relationships, it reflects our faith in the world. And our faith in the world ought to be rooted in God. And this is what it means to be formed to fight. Thank you so much for spending time with me.